right, let's move to the Friday games twos now. We'll start with the Rangers and Hurricanes. The Blue Shirts plus 150 on the road. The Hurricanes minus 170. The over-under here set at 5.5. A rare 5.5 in the NHL these days. Don't know how long that one will hang around, but there's a couple things we got to touch on in this contest, right? Game one went to the Hurricanes in overtime. They did not deserve the win. The Rangers were terrific in the first two periods and then kind of ceded the floor to the Hurricanes and said, you know what, we're okay with a 1-0 lead. Why they played like that, I don't know. Took Carolina 18 minutes in the third period to finally break through, and they did. And it was a terrific 20 minutes from Carolina in that third period. They carried that over into the overtime, get a lucky bounce and win. That said, this was a game. This game was on a silver platter for the Rangers. That was the worst game the Hurricanes have played in the playoffs so far, and they had a couple of, I want to call them duds against the Bruins, but they had a couple games where the Bruins really outplayed them. And this one, I just didn't even recognize the team that was playing for Carolina in those first 40 minutes. Like, this is an all-action swarming team, and that was just not what we saw in a playoff game. So a very odd performance from Carolina. But I do think that this is kind of how I would line the series with what we've seen overall from these two teams all season and then into the playoffs. Like, Carolina has been a really good 5-on-5 team all year long. We've touched on the Rangers 5-on-5 issues a lot. So I'm probably just going to stay away from this one and think that, this series, the Rangers really had a chance to grab a foothold in the series and squandered it. Whether they can respond to that, this team has bounced back pretty well over the course of the postseason. Who knows? But this is a long way for me to say I'll probably be passing here, and maybe a bet on the over.
This is another example of how the game has changed. In the past, the Rangers, they tried so hard to nurse that game home up 1-0, and in the past they probably would have gotten away with it. But in today's NHL, you just can't sit back anymore. And we saw in the third period, the Rangers had no interest at all in any sustained offensive zone possession. Of course, with a goaltender like Igor playing behind you, it is tempting to play that way when you have the lead. But I give so much credit to the Hurricanes here for fighting through it and pulling it out in a game where they didn't have anywhere close to their A game. I would expect the Hurricanes to be better in game two. And I also expect some goals, since I scored it higher than 2 goals scored in 60 minutes in that game.
Yeah, both goalies were really good.
Yeah, exactly. And game one closed minus 165. So I do wonder if we see that adjusted down just because, Carolina won. They won in overtime. Even though they won in overtime, I am not going to penalize the better team pulling out a win when they didn't play well against an elite goaltender. If that gets pushed much lower, I will be closer to the Canes. I agree with you on the total. I thought that the juiced 5.5 was fair. And like I mentioned, I did score it higher. So if that total gets pushed down to a flat 5.5 on the over, which I can see based on the final score in this game, the over is the way that I will be looking at as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing, if you are trying to look into how that game played out, if the Hurricanes play like they did in that third period, if the games they win, they'll probably win going away, because that sustained pressure against a much better team than Pittsburgh with a better goalie backing it up, right? The chances that there's a multi-goal win for Carolina are pretty high compared to where the odds will be. So Carolina on like minus 1.5 is probably gonna provide some value too in the early going off of a performance like that, where, like you said, it was low scoring. People will look at 2-1 overtime game playoffs. These two teams, maybe it'll play out like the Stars and Flames just did. Where I just don't think that's going to be the case with the way these two teams on paper should match up.